that the last thing you fund is public safety? No. We raised taxes one year to buy breathing apparatuses for firefighters, you may remember that. That was our lowest priority. Then we did another time, we raised the cigarette tax to buy radios for ambulances, EMS vehicles, you may remember that. You know, these are bad, those are false choices. And I said this budget is really made up of false choices. It's telling you, absent a tax increase, we can't take care of the basic needs of citizens. It's just not true. It's just not true. But your point's well taken. Yes, Diane, I'll come back.
What is the other property that they're putting in the TIF fund? Because the budget says there's 2 properties that are going in the TIF.
You have
For town center.
City View, which has yet to break ground and do something. I don't know, maybe they haven't reached their 70% of tenant leases in order to secure bank financing, because pretty much banks want to make sure you got leases on all this stuff before they loan you money. But we gave them back $9.5 million, I think it was, of their property tax to pay for their garage.
Yeah, I remember that last year.
Now we have a new proposal that's on the plate, which you'll see come up on the thing in May. But someone else wants to take the property. Remember the mental health property that Mr. Dennis Wool bought, the hotel for $6 million, and they found out it was structural failure, and we sold it to someone. They tore it down. They couldn't build it. We ended up with it again, right behind the McDonald's. And now someone wants to build on that property, but guess what they want from us? They want us to help them pay for the second entrance to the road. They want us to help them pay for all the utilities. They want us to cost participate in the drainage, and they want us to give them back part of their tax revenue so that they can finance their parking lot, because they can get more building. Why is that our responsibility? It's not. I'm not voting for it. They know I'm not voting for it. They pushed it off till after the budget because there's too much stuff to handle. But these giveaways, how long have we been giving away at Town Center, and we're raising taxes? So that's it. I'm going to give her a come back to Tony. Yes, ma'am.
So, in regards to the mayor's budget,
the city manager's budget.
the city manager, I'm sorry, not the mayor. The city manager's budget proposal. In terms of the real estate tax rate, we all know he's trying to increase it, been trying to increase it for years. Is there any threshold for them in terms of the tax assessment? Because when you couple that with the increase in tax assessments, it kind of makes it even more ridiculous. So there should be, is there any way that city council can, or is there already any stipulations put in place for him in terms of the amount that they can increase the assessments on a yearly basis?
The city assessments is done by the city real estate assessor, who is appointed by council. And he has to have methodologies. He assesses businesses' buildings, not their land. The buildings are assessed on an income basis. Now, I don't get to see all of that, but all I know is that hotels in the oceanfront haven't assessed as fast as your house. I can tell you that. So either one, they're not as doing as well as they say they are when I talk about publicly, or their profitability, but the room rates. But that's on residential properties, it's supposed to be taxed on the current market value. He goes and does these surveys. He's doing more field surveys than the fire one did, the hairstylist. But a much better job because he's going out in the field with notebooks, taking pictures of the property, looking at, and people can check. And the state law was changed so that if you can come up with I'll call it preponderance of the evidence that your house is overvalued, the burden of proof shifts to the city to prove that their answer is correct. And he has to show you all the comparables and how he derived and got your estimate. I'll have to say most of the appeals were not successful, but there was a neighborhood, you may recall it, North Beach, one year that went and they got together as a neighborhood, and Tony may recall this, they hired a lawyer, and they went there, they on average got a $50,000 reduction in each home because they got together, did the homework. Remember, the homework you have to do and the cost to get the appraiser might cost you more than the tax you're being asked to pay. So it's kind of a first system that the burden of proof. But you can go down and ask for an appointment to show you what he used as a comparable for your property. You can do that. And I encourage everyone, I wish everyone filed an appeal and everybody got asked for an appointment. That'd be great. Because these people should be challenged. They should be challenged. Yes?
John, I'm just curious, in going back to Wegmans and such a community oriented corporation. And I'm just curious as to whether they were aware that their tax revenues would be strictly in the town center tip area as opposed to the general fund. Are you aware of whether they had that information at hand when they decided their location?
No, I don't, but I do know one of the reasons why you wouldn't see them getting an incentive payment is because grocery stores are not one of the 5 business, the 5 thrusts for which you can qualify for these taxpayer giveaways. I would only suspect that any business of that size was looking at disposable income, density of households and demographics, and looked at that location. It's sometimes wondering why do you see a Burger King right next door to a McDonald's because they're competing? But what a point I would make is it is a redistribution of income. It isn't like people are going to be traveling from Norfolk to come to Wegmans or Chesapeake for the most part. So you're redistributing dollars that are already being spent. And what does that mean? If an income, say the food line over here, that property starts generating less income, what happens? Its property tax will be reduced on those buildings because it's generating less income. And so that's a loss to the unrestricted general fund. And the gain is to the tip. So it is in that sense that you can look at that as a predatory effect on that, and you're probably not getting a substantial increase in sales tax revenues because you're just redistributing the income that's already in the economy. Now, it does create some more jobs. And it takes a very detailed analysis to understand what the net gain is, but it isn't unreasonable to say, to some extent, there'll be a slower growth rate because there'll be a slower income growth on those properties when people go to the food line or don't go to whatever they go to, much as what's true with Walmart. Because that is true, and those are subtler things to sometimes see, but it does have an impact. But no, I can't answer your question, but I do know they did not get any benefit. In fact, I'm sure they would prefer that we didn't have the Wegmans there. They didn't want the Walmart either. And but you know how beautiful that Walmart looks, that 10-foot, that long wall right up against the boulevard? Because this was supposed to be this urbane, walkable city, blah, 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 social engineering people. And when you go look, they built it right up on the curb. All it is just a solid brick wall. Might as well be that wall on the southern border, or used to be in Germany, just nice of brick. But there's nothing beautiful about that. It's ugly. But this is the more urbane, walkable wall there, I guess you can put it.
I don't know it's a Walmart.
But, so my point is, some of these things that we're doing just don't make any sense, but you go to the Urban Planning Institute and this is what you get. But nonetheless, but I think your answer, that's what I would say from Wegmans. It's certainly not going to employ people, but that's no, I'm not aware that they didn't contact me. They might have contacted Lewis, or they might have contacted Economic Development. Certain planning knew that they did there, and I'm sure they were asked to do certain things. But if you look at the store, you'll see how the parking garage runs parallel to the front, and that's a narrow thing there. So obviously the demographics told them, is it? Now the winners are the city, because residents, why is that? We have one of the most competitive food markets in the country. The competition between the commissaries and the big box retailers, there's a lot of food competition in Hampton Roads, and certainly in Virginia Beach, and that certainly benefits residents in terms of food prices. Yes.
I'm not sure if you can answer this or not. This was something when you, Robert, and Nancy Parker were on council.
Ooh, that goes back.
That goes back a ways, but I remember when Dr. Fawcett was superintendent, and he took a $12 million that was in Fund A, I don't know what the fund was, and used it in another manner because the state money or federal money was coming in late. So he moved that money over, and I remember you all taking him to task at a city council meeting before that. So how is the allocation of full funding for kindergarten last year, and then the money was not used for that, but used for other things, not the same kind of...
Yeah, why is it?
Laura's not here, so I might not get this exactly right.
Why is that not
But
recovered?
it's not because I'm not trying to get it right. In May of 2017, you got to really roll the clock back. And Once again, the school board wasn't even talking about full day kindergarten, citywide, or anything else. And at the last minute, they came up and passed this resolution long after, matter of fact, only like 2 weeks before we were doing budget reconciliation, and said they wanted 2.25 cents, if I remember correctly, a real estate tax increase to implement kindergarten citywide. Well, in reality, they weren't spooled up. They couldn't implement, open that many schools. So they had this 5-year plan that they presented the city council to do full day kindergarten, this phased approach, right? Because one of the concerns was the minute that we had full citywide kindergarten, the $7 million that we were using to fund full day kindergarten for Title I schools, federal funding could no longer be required because federal funds cannot be used to supplement city funds. It's against federal law. So once you have a requirement for local funding, you can't use federal money to supplant that. So that means you'd have to come up with $7 million like that. So they had this program they planned to stretch it out over. Council approved. I didn't vote for it. The tax increase wasn't needed because they were only implementing about $2 million worth of kindergarten expense in that first year, which would have been the budget of 1 October, which would have been 18, but would have been that budget year, right? So they didn't need, but the tax was generating $6.7 million of income. Income that they didn't need for full day kindergarten. So, because they were only phasing in $2 million plus worth of expense. So they did lots of other stuff, bought buses, bought this, bought that. Okay, I said, but they could have found $2 million in their budget, but that's not as good of a sales pitch. So you use one thing and then you do another. So it's false advertising, but they've been guilty.
Isn't it?
Okay, they've been guilty of that more than once. So when it came to year 2, right, they're implementing another set of schools. We didn't raise taxes for kindergarten, did we? No. Why? Because they had more than enough revenue to fund the second year of their 5-year program. Makes sense. You come to year 3, which is the one we're in now, they have more than enough revenue with the tax approved in May of 17 to do the 3rd year program. But they want to move the 4th year into the 3rd year, and then of course we'd have to, then the next year you'd be picking up that Title I money. So this is an acceleration of a plan that they approved, that they presented, that they said met the best pace of doing things. Well, they need $4.9 million, they say, because they put more schools into that 4th year than they originally had. But what they don't say is that they've ended every year with a surplus. Now, the chairman gave this song and dance explanation that you can't use one-time revenue for recurring expenses. And I would agree with that. The difference being is they have recurring revenue within that surplus amount. And you say, well, Mr. Moss, how can you possibly even know that? Well, one, I read. That's the first thing. This is the critical thinking skill they want all the students to have, so I'm practicing. So every year they've under-executed labor. And last year was $16 million. This year they're forecasting they're going to under-execute their labor account $17 to $19 million. Now I'm just talking about labor. Now it's interesting, on the benefit side, their under-execution is very low. It's like in the hundreds of thousands. Now what does that tell you? That they're hiring people, they don't have lots of vacancies and people are taking their benefits, but their average cost of labor is less than what they're budgeting for. And he said he was budgeting for an average cost of, Rhoda was there, $75,000. So when you take off the benefits and look at that average pay, it's not the average teacher expense that they have. So in fact, they have $4.9 million plus of recurring revenues if they honestly budgeted their actual payroll that they were going to be paying. And so they could in fact fund and flow that $4.9 million. They don't want to, doesn't mean that they can't. It's a choice they are making. and I refuse to reward bad choices. So my recommendation, my thought is for the city council to take the anticipated ending fund balance that they're gonna get and give it back to them and dedicate $4.9 million for full-day kindergarten. They can pay with it with their own money, which they could be doing anyway. But they refuse. Instead, what they do is they misrepresent to the public, and so then they turn out all the people who didn't turn out at their public hearing, who turn out at the city council hearing and blame the city council or say that we should fund the financial misbudgeting of the school board, and then tell us how terrible we are if we don't fund it. When the mission statement of the school board is students first. If students were first, there's something in their base budget other than full-day kindergarten that should be unfunded, just like if flooding is first, something in the city's budget should be unfunded for flooding. We should not let these people escape the very kind of accountability they want to hold the students to in the classroom. That's consistency. I don't care how many things that they say and want to put, if I say, I don't care how much green leaf you put on that cow patty, it still tastes like crap. They can't cover that up. They are not doing their job. They're misrepresenting their financial ability to fund full-day kindergarten. Everyone, and I guess we're going to...
Does the rest of city council understand this basic concept? I mean, it's very clear to me that you understand it, but do you think Rosemary Wilson, do you think Louis Jones, do you think the other members of council understand that there's all this money that they could just
I don't know what they do or don't understand, and it's just unfair probably asking that question, because I wouldn't want them to be saying what I think. So all I can say is they have yet to publicly express what they understand, and they have yet to publicly express what they think. But what I do know from Laura Hughes, when she talked about, for those who are there, she said no one talked about this additional tax increase during the whole 6 months, from October through March. The school board met, had hearings, met with the public hearings, no one talked about it. And then the Friday before their vote, they got an email from the chairman who said that she was contacted by a member of city council, that's Rosemary Wilson, for those of you watching, and said that she had the votes were there to raise taxes. So if she runs for the Beach District in November, you don't remember that. Then, that she had the votes to raise taxes, and then all of a sudden they had a resolution on the agenda to vote for, which many people spoke on, to raise the real estate tax. Now it's down to 0.85 cents. It was a penny at the time, but now they're down to 0.85 to raise taxes. But I don't know what they do or don't know. I do know I have expressed it in the informal session, so they've heard it. But whether or not they're willing to make the tough choices, because I'm sure it's easy to always, this is what happens when you have, I'm sure you've heard this, when you have an expense, a benefit that's to a few people, but the cost is spread widely, the few people who are going to be at the cash register getting that refund always show up. The wide dispersed people who pay the bill are less motivated. And more importantly, what are they doing? They're busy trying to get their kids back and get the homework done. They're taking care of an elderly parent. They don't get home from work, from driving their car, and till 6 o'clock. They sit maybe by 7 o'clock. They're finally taking a breath. And the next thing they're going to do is they can't wait to rush out to the public hearing to speak about the budget. No. And what happens? Unfortunately, we've got a governmental structure that doesn't take. The public isn't apathetic. They're just exhausted. They're not apathetic. They are exhausted and they're being preyed upon. This is a predatory budget. I know that sounds very tough, but that is not an overstatement of what this budget is. So the few who are going to get a benefit, full-day kindergarten, great. But they have